Welcome to the Laramie City Council work session for February 25th, 2025. And I'll start with asking, are there any public comments on non-agenda items at this time? Yes.
Thank you for
If you will come up to the podium,
Of course, yes.
and then if you can state your name for the record.
Okay. My name is Reverend Dr. Sally Palmer. I've lived here since January 2nd, 1982, and I know certain people on the council very well. But thank you for asking for public comments, because even to be able to comment, I find is a great privilege. So I have something to say about the environment, but I want to give this to you all because each of you, in your own way, love the whole of Albany County. So anybody can share these chocolates or not? Talk about bribe. There's milk and dark. No, anybody would. No, and certain people in council have cared so much for the quality of life here, as have I. So the only handout I have to give you is about water and the importance of trees and water. So I can pass that to somebody if you want it. But I honor you for what you're trying to do to build a bridge to West Laramie and the west side. That's hard work. So anybody who wants my information I've collected for 40 years can have it. But basically, Albany County grants person, Sheila Schermitzer, saw to it that Lincoln Community Center was renovated, and that made all the difference, you know. So now Parkinson Group meets there. But anyway, I don't want to take much time, but bless you for caring for water and for the people on both sides of the track. The last thing, here, you can have this. But basically, I've done maybe 20 presentations for the Shepherd Symposium, and one of them, a member of the West Side, I can tell you his name, but he said when he lived here younger, there's a big sign and a restaurant downtown that said, Mexicans and dogs are not allowed. And you were working through those cultural prejudices, but also through the geographical prejudice. So I'll sit down, but God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Palmer. We appreciate your coming to council. And any other public comments on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we will begin our work session. And our first session is the Albany County Council on Trafficking presentation. And I welcome Justin Scott. Good evening, Mr. Scott.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you for your time today. And Council, I appreciate your guys' time. First, I just wanted to kind of introduce myself and give just a brief background. I'm the Executive Director for ACT, the local trafficking task force here in Laramie. We've been around for about 3-ish years, and we've really formed and gotten together and become really organized within the past 2. Prior to that, I spent a handful of years going through some medical rehab after I was hurt in the line of duty. I was in law enforcement prior to up in Douglas. I was the undersheriff up there. Prior to law enforcement, I served as a wildland firefighter, and I'm a Wyoming native, been here my whole life. With me tonight is Mitch Cushman. He's the president on my board for the Albany Task Force, and Yes, that just kind of gives you just a little bit of who I am and who's with me tonight. If there's any time that there's a question, please feel free to ask away. I provided a presentation tonight. There's some slides up there, but it's very more, I really want to be kind of catered to what you guys have to ask questions. So I have a presentation, I'll run through it, but please stop me and ask questions anytime you like. And if we go down a rabbit hole, so be it. I really don't mind. I don't have much of an agenda tonight. So with that, we'll move on. So one thing, sometimes I forget when I present to the city that stuff goes up online and things get recorded and all that. And I think I would have chosen a little bit better of a presentation to give to you guys. But this is kind of a slide just to represent what human trafficking isn't. We get kind of focused on what human trafficking is by what we see on Hollywood or what we may see on TV. And it's a lot of taken. It's a lot of boundaries or borders. It's a lot of thrills, you know. The movie called Taken, you know, it's a very aggressive movie that is full of action and it keeps you on your toes. And it's a movie that it's designed to, and it fills that goal. It reaches that climactic experience that one is after in a movie. So I'm not bashing the movie, it's designed what it is. But we have a survivor friend that actually was watching that movie while she was being trafficked, and she was watching it and she says, well, that's trafficking. That's not what that's not what I'm encountering. That is. So she kept on being trafficked, knowing that that's what she knew something was going on, but she didn't know what. But she knew the show trafficking was. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It gets the story out there, but it's not quite accurate. So that's kind of where I was going with this slide. But with this next slide, this is what human trafficking looks like. And this is what human trafficking more looks like here in the U.S., here in Wyoming. And that's kind of what of a presentation that I provided you guys tonight, is more of a slideshow of what human trafficking looks like here in our communities across Wyoming. Human trafficking looks different wherever we go. Internationally, it looks completely different than what we see here in Wyoming. Internationally, it looks like a lot of prepubescent children that we're dealing with. Here in America, it's all ages and of different types, and we'll talk about that tonight. But here in Wyoming, we'll talk about the different types, but we'll first start out with sex trafficking, because when you talk about human trafficking, that's kind of where your mind goes to. We'll break it into two different portions tonight between sex trafficking and human trafficking, with sex trafficking kind of being the highlight of the evening. The umbrella side of things, that just kind of breaks it down for you a little bit of what it takes to bring in that act, of what a commercial sex act is, and then what it compounds into what it makes it become a human trafficking or sex trafficking, when you bring in that force, fraud, or coercion, and that third party. So here we go on what it looks like here in Wyoming and the different types of sex trafficking that we see here in Wyoming. The biggest type that, and the biggest first thing that comes to your people's mind is the pimp-driven trafficking, the type of trafficking that you see where there is a trafficker and a victim. That's what we're referring to when we see pimp-driven. And it's very a demand-driven type of trafficking, meaning that there is a demand for it, meaning that we have a lot of buyers seeking this type of trafficking. And it looks like a lot of online ads. You think about Craigslist, but on the dark web. Think about websites that you guys don't have access to, that buyers and sellers of this commercial sex, this type of trafficking do have access to, and it's a market online. It looks like truck stop industry, to where we have victims knocking on door to door at our truck stops here locally, soliciting themselves to sell themselves to the truckers, to the point where we have a nationwide nonprofit group called Truckers Against Trafficking that try to combat this solely through the truckers industry. And it's so prevalent within our trucking industry that the truckers have their own opt-out stickers that they put on their sticker or on their trucker doors, indicating to the victims that they are opting out of this. Please do not knock on my door. So it's actually it's so prevalent that it's an opt-out type situation. And then we think about it at large events. Super Bowl always comes to mind, where, human trafficking, or the Super Bowl, you always hear that the Super Bowl is the largest trafficking event in the nation. Well, that might be the case, but it reverts back to that demand issue. It comes back to the fact that it's a large population of purchasers in a smaller area. And it's the same thing as Cheyenne Frontier Days and or Sturgis Rally that we have in our communities here around Wyoming. These things happen locally. A friend of mine who trains with me, goes around the state and trains law enforcement with me, was the first lead investigator to start doing some stings over in Cheyenne during Cheyenne Frontier Days. And it got to the point where they had to shut some of their stings down because it came so popular that they were having traffic jams in downtown Cheyenne because of their stings, that they were putting out advertisements online to meet me here at such and such location downtown Cheyenne, and traffic was overflowing. So that was just a small indicator of the demand aspects of what we're seeing here in Wyoming. So we've identified around 22 gangs in Wyoming. And when it comes to gang trafficking, we see it where it's just another way for our gangs to make money. We see a lot of intersectionality where they're selling drugs and they're selling humans because they can make money off of it. We see it more on our native reservations more than anywhere else. So I'm not saying that we necessarily have a problem with our gangs here in Laramie, but I'm talking about statewide, and we see it a lot on our reservations to the point where it's, right now we have some partners up in around Riverton and Lander talking about the different problems that they're facing today with the gangs that are sitting on the reservations, just really recently too. So they got that family mentality where it's just really dangerous, and that gang intersectionality with other crimes is really present. So I just wanted to make that noted.
Justin?
Yes.
I think Councilor Newman has a question.
Yes.
And
Councilor Newman?
you might not be able to answer this, but do you know how many gangs are identified here in Laramie?
No, I can't identify that question.
Yay, I know somebody who can later.
Maybe. So familial trafficking is just what it sounds like. This is when family members trafficked by another family member. This is probably one of the most documented forms of human trafficking, or reported forms of human trafficking in Wyoming that we see. This is when individuals physically trafficked out of their own home. And that's why I don't like the word trafficked, because you really don't have to be taken anywhere to be trafficked. So this is one that's a really hard one to swallow, because it deals with individuals trafficking their own children. But a lot of times it's forced by drugs, it's forced by gangs, it's a last resort for a lot of people, and this is what they revert to. Is we have survivors that have trained us, we have survivors that work alongside of us, that this is the form of trafficking that they suffered through, and they talk about how it was most of the time it was their parents, and it was a drug-related debt or a gang-related debt. So going back to the online, we haven't even talked, I talked a little bit about how that pimp-controlled trafficking has gone really online, and I'd like to kind of elaborate a little bit on that. What we have is a little bit of what we call circuits, and what circuits are is when a victim will post online, and say a victim out of Colorado comes up to Wyoming. We don't have a ton of homegrown victims just sitting in our communities, although we do on certain situations such as familial trafficking. But when it comes to the pimp-style trafficking, we have a lot of circuits. And those are when we have our victims, they travel through our communities. They never stay more than a handful of days, and they just pass through. And they'll put their ads out on the internet. Their Johns or their buyers will communicate with them, say in Laramie or Cheyenne, as soon as they pop over into the state line. And as they communicate with their buyers here locally, they'll be reaching out to Rollins or Rock Springs or even Evanston, and they'll create a circle through the state, and they'll just be reaching out and staying a few nights in each town throughout the state, and then they'll wind back down into Cheyenne and go back into Colorado. We have a friend that did that for 4 years. She lived in Greeley, Colorado. She now runs one of the largest nonprofits regarding human trafficking in the country. She did it for 4 years. She never got caught by law enforcement. She never had contact by a service provider. She had multiple contacts with individuals in the state of Wyoming, but she never had contact with anybody. But she just went from place to place throughout the state of Wyoming and came back through. But anyways, going back to more of the online, we haven't even talked about the type of trafficking that goes on online when we talk about our youth. Mitch and I just spent this morning talking to a lot of youth advocates about prevention work and how we want to train our youth here in the community about starting with online prevention and getting more and more into that youth prevention. But it starts with education, and as we move on, we have a group in the state called ICAC, that's the Internet Crimes Against Children. They receive what we call, if I just move forward, you can see it here. They receive these cyber tips every year, and they come from an organization called NCMEC. I'm dropping off a whole bunch of names, but we'll just continue on through that. But these cyber tips come in at a federal level. They're organized and they're dropped into the states where they're investigated. From there, they're passed on onto these investigators, and they're gone through, and you can see statistically how many we've targeted here in Wyoming over the past few years. In 2024, those cyber tips reached over 1,000. And that's just coming, those are just the, my training partner has a great analogy for them. She calls them the lowest, they're not even the lowest hanging fruit, those ones that we're getting. They're the fruit that have died and fallen onto the ground, meaning that they're the criminals that are not the smartest ones that we're catching there. Yes, ma'am.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So just to be clear, the ICAC cyber tips, is that specific to trafficking, or is that broadly crimes against children?
That's broadly crimes against children. These are CSAM videos, child pornography type video or film photos, and they are usually classified under sex trafficking type charges.
Got a follow-up too.
Follow-up?
Thank you, and maybe you'll get to this at the end, but do you have, or can you point us to the data of the prevalency of this, of sex trafficking in Wyoming specifically?
No, and I can explain that
Thank you.
right now. There is no data. This is the best data that we could find for you, and this is the best data that we present. We don't present data when it comes to labor trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking in general, because it doesn't exist. We can provide some statistics on things, but it's very loose-knit. We don't present anything because the statistics that we do have are very loose-knit, and they aren't very accurate. Because of this type of crime is so taboo and so underground that the amount of prosecutions that we would be able to collect data from are so small and relative to how many cases that we truly have. And with the amount of privacy that goes on behind the taking in of victims and survivors and the limited data that we collect as an agency, we don't collect much at all. Yeah. Any?
Continue.
Okay. So illicit massage businesses is one of the last forms of human trafficking that we see in Wyoming. I have some cases of some recent events that I'll pass on to you guys. And this is probably one of the cruelest forms of human trafficking that we find in our area. And what happens is I could talk about this type until I'm blue in the face, but I'll try to make it quick. But what happens here is the victims and survivors that are trafficked out of this form are actually foreign Southeast Asian victims that come from poverty-stricken countries, poverty-stricken villages that are recruited by traffickers, and they start out in a world of debt bondage right from the beginning. Debt bondage is a way to control our victims and survivors. I thought it was my phone. And, so these recruiters will try to recruit these women who have aged out of their culture, aged out of their community. They're single women, they're working class women, and in their culture, they age out at a very young age. We're talking young to mid-30s. And they will start out with a large debt of money because they'll get a loan for anywhere between $20,000 to $60,000, and that's money that they've never even heard of before. And they will get on a plane with the trafficker and come over to the country legally. They'll obtain all of their legal documents. As soon as they make it over to the U.S., all of those documents are taken away. They create a joint banking account with their trafficker, and let it be known that these, not to be disrespectful at all, but these poor victims literally don't know their rear end from their elbow. You ask them, there's research done before, and I've read articles explaining that there's advocates asking them where their knee is, and they can't tell you. They don't know where their knee is. But that's how uneducated that they are, and they're getting bank accounts in the United States 3 days later. So they're doomed right from the get-go. But from there, when they're in Asia, they're promised jobs of anywhere from beauty jobs to cutting hair, and sometimes they're even promised jobs to be in Hollywood. And but once they're brought over to the country, they're immediately told that they're going to be in the commercial sex industry. They're forced into these massage parlors that they make dollars giving massages. They don't make anything else unless they provide a sexual act at the end, and then they receive tips from the Johns that frequent the facility. They're tortured, they're beaten, they're raped. They're put into this, like I said, the debt bondage goes as far as their meals when they're at the massage business. Hairbrushes, water, that's all calculated into their debt bondage. And even if they collect the money, even if they do deposit money into that account, it's a joint account, so the traffickers have access to it anyways. And I can continue talking about illicit massage businesses until I'm blue in the face, like I said, but we'll continue on. Here's a couple cases that we've had in Wyoming. Some in Casper, some in Rock Springs. We've also had some in Gillette. The one in Rock Springs, a friend of mine handled, and then she retired. This is kind of one of those, this is a sneak peek at one of the websites or underground internet sites that I talked to you guys about. It goes as far as even having reviews of the facilities. As you can see there up on top, you have a John leaving a review of one of the places, obviously redacted. I picked this one. This is an actual facility in Ohio. This is a town in Ohio about the size of Laramie. It has a Division I university in the same town as, so I kind of did the demographics of a community the size of Laramie. But this is just kind of what you would see on the buyer side of the website. I hate to put this slide up, but I do because everyone asks for it. But this is some of the indicators that people see when it comes to the indicators of the trafficker versus the victim. But you'd see this, this should raise some red flags if you were, could be a domestic violence victim. It could be lots of things, but people always ask for, well, what should I look for? What should I look for? Well, it's hard to say because it could come in so many different ways, but these are some of the ways that a trafficker could come out on, and or a victim could come out as. So here's another indicator. These are, most of them all are off of a victim or a survivor. The crown indicates power and control, so you'll see these on a lot of survivors. The top left there is the trafficker's initials on a victim. Obviously, the bottom left is somebody's name on a victim. The bottom right is regarding an illicit massage business. One thing that I didn't share is that the people that are trafficking these victims out of Southeast Asia are a part of a criminal organization. This isn't a homegrown American operation. This is a Chinese criminal cartel that handles this. This is organized crime in our communities, and that's that tattoo there in the bottom right is one of the cartel's signs. And then our fun gentleman in the middle there eating the money, that's just another sign. That's just a pimp showing his power and control by eating money. You probably caught a cold after that. So switching gears, before I switch gears, does anybody have any questions about trafficking before I kind of switch?
Councilor Bowling?
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you, Mayor. Pardon me, and sorry for those on Zoom. Just going back a few slides, I'm just curious when it comes to an event such as the Rock Springs investigation or the Casper investigations, and it looks like in 23. When there's an investigation like that or law enforcement gets involved in either an enforcement mechanism, what are some of the follow-ups that happen in terms of like resources for victims, support services that are available when something is discovered, and then obviously our law enforcement is going to try and deal with that?
That's a great question, and I really appreciate it because the answer is absolutely nothing. There are very minimal resources for our victims in our community statewide. However, we are getting prepared. We're gearing up for that, and don't get me wrong, our law enforcement officials are prepared. So if they go into a place and they know that they're going to be pulling victims or survivors out, they're prepared. They're involved. They're going to make sure that there's people in place. But locally, we don't have anybody. So on cases where we're dealing with illicit massage businesses specifically, we're going to Washington, D.C. to get resources. There's an organization there called The Network that specifically deals with illicit massage businesses, and they will bring out free of charge translators so we can communicate with our victims and survivors, and that at least gives us a line of communication so we can provide services. Who's going to provide those services? That guy right there, and our task force here in Laramie. What we have done here in Laramie is no one else has done. There's a group in there's a group in Newcastle that's trying to form like we have, but we're the first of our kind in the state, and we have about 27 to 30 volunteers that are willing to take care of survivors, not only here in Laramie, but statewide, and we're working on some grants so we can get to those survivors statewide, but right now, we're hoping that we can do what we can remotely. We recently just finished taking care of a survivor that was outside of Laramie. We took care of them for about 2 weeks, and that looked like case management. That looked like seeking long-term care facilities, and that looked like telemarketing, sorry. That looked like teletherapy. And that's limited, but that's all we can do right now. But if say, Riverton needed some people, we could send some people there, but it would be coming out of Laramie, because we're the only resource in the state right now.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Does that conclude your,
No, I just wanted to make sure I answered anything before I moved on right quick.
okay, continue.
Okay, so I'll wrap up with just kind of sharing where we came from. Our task force didn't just come out of thin air. We did a lot of research before we got organized. And this is one of the roadmaps that we followed. The Department of Justice, along with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, provided this roadmap to develop a task force, a community-based task force. So this is kind of how we originally formed, was following these platforms and going through these diagrams to make sure that we were doing things the right way and that we weren't jumping through or we weren't speeding through the process of forming. And this is kind of where we landed. This is an organizational wheel made by an organization that we were trained through called Altus something. Sorry, I forgot their name. But what they feel is that through these 5 pillars, starting with prevention and ending with reforms, that this covers what it takes to combat human trafficking from a community approach. So if we cover it from prevention, identification, rescue, restoration, and reforms, and we handle all of those outliers that we're attacking human trafficking the best we can from a community. So how we aligned ourselves with this is that we created 5 teams. We created a prevention team, a rescue team, and a reforms team, and so on and so forth. That way we knew that we were covering human trafficking from all 5 points. That way we weren't missing anything or creating any gaps in our community. So that's how we decided that we were going to make sure that we were handling human trafficking from a holistic approach. So we have a team leader for each one of those 5 pillars, and each one of them has a team of volunteers that addresses human trafficking from that standpoint. Such as today in our prevention team, such as the one that Mitch is on, they were teaching a bunch of adults on how we want to teach youth about prevention. So they were the prevention team up there doing that. That was a lot of talking, guys. Lastly, this is how you can get involved. That's our information. Prevention and awareness, have conversations. Spreading good information, that's always one that I like to share with everybody that I chat with, is there's a lot of good information out there about human trafficking, but there's a lot of scary information out there that's being shared about human trafficking. So there's a lot of, glamorized stuff about people in chains and being behind bars and in handcuffs, and that's not really a reality of human trafficking, and we try not to share that type of stuff because it's not what we see. And kind of going back to that movie and our survivor friend, we don't like to really share stuff that's not reality when it comes to human trafficking. So just watch out for those sensationalized stories and graphics. And if you really get into this, just watch out for those legitimate agencies and organizations, because there's good ones and bad ones everywhere you go. So with that being said, I really would appreciate any questions or take anything on.
Councillor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for coming in, Justin and Mitch. I appreciate it. I've never seen you without sunglasses on. I've never seen you without sunglasses, but thank you. Getting back to events that, the bigger events like Frontier Days and whatnot, how about smaller events like what we have, like at Jubilee Days, with the carnival and things of that nature? And the reason I ask is last summer my wife and I were there, and there was it kind of looked a little shady, a couple things. And so she went to an officer and just pointed it out. We didn't want to point fingers, but we're made it aware that I don't think that looks right.
Sure.
Do you see that at things like that too?
Yeah, I think we see that in every event or anything that brings in outsiders, we kind of get that suspicion rises up. And we also see that at our UW football games, where we have a crowd that brings in outsiders. It always it's a natural reaction. We're not trying to discriminate against anybody. It's just natural. And growing up and being in law enforcement, I worked in Douglas, and we had the state fair every year. And every year we patrolled the state fairgrounds, and every year we had some people come up and just be that, hey, this just doesn't seem right. And, that sixth sense is something, especially when it comes to parents. So reporting that is not a problem. Trying to find if it's human trafficking is a completely other thing. Proving it is a completely other thing. So is it good to report? Absolutely. And what I tell everybody is try to be the best witness that you possibly can. Try not to get involved. Do the best not to create a stir, but be the best witness that you can. Look for license plates, take pictures, and report it. And that's kind of my motto.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Counselor O'Doherty.
Regarding events, I was thinking maybe, I was wondering if those signs in bathrooms help victims of trafficking, and maybe in events, we should make sure they're in porta potties.
Yes, absolutely, and that's one of our initiatives within that wheel that I was showing you guys. It's kind of part of our identification team's job, is to get out there with outreach work and get out there and get those posters up. There's some organizations that do that nationally. There's an organization in Cheyenne that does that pretty consistently, and you can see us doing that in the near future. We will be taking that role on here in Laramie for sure.
Any other questions? Counselor Newman?
I have a question, I have a comment, if that's fine.
Yes, of course. Any comments? Welcome as well.
This is one of the work sessions that I look forward to and then hate at the same time, because it's great that you're coming out here and presenting this so the community can see what to report, what to look out for, and those kinds of things. I also want to say I appreciate how you started this, because human trafficking doesn't always look like the movies, and I'll speak from family experience. My cousin was part of this ring, and it was, go do this because you love your daddy. She was 6 when this happened and stopped when she was 12. So I appreciate what you come to do, and that's the reason why I hate this, is because I have to relive this every time that you come here. But the way that you started this, I appreciate that, because it isn't, when we heard about it, because her father was in the military and they moved to Germany. When we learned about this, I was like, well, that's not what I know what trafficking is, right? Because I've watched the Taken movies. I think there's 3 of them now or whatever it is. And I think as a community, people start to see those and was like, oh, well, that's not what really happened. And the thing about these gangs and stuff when this happens is he didn't rat anybody out. He took it. He's in Lansing right now, and so I'm sure that ring continued. And it was and something that I wanted to make sure to say was, it's not just one of these, right? It's not just a family member. His was a family member that was happening online in a chat room, going to this spot, kind of like you're saying, they're here for a couple days, and then he can find all of this, so it's more than one thing. But I appreciate the work that you do, and this hits home too much when you come, but I truly do appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
One other thing, sorry.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin. I also just wanted to mention, I don't know, and ask if you're familiar with the group Uprising, who's in Sheridan,
Yeah.
doing that group. So I didn't know if there were other entities around the state besides you and Uprising.
No, there isn't. Terry, the director, and I are close friends. We trained for the past 2 days together. We're going over to Cheyenne to testify on a bill tomorrow together. Terry and I work hand in hand. We're pretty much the go-to in the state regarding human trafficking. She kind of runs the training and prevention side of things, and we kind of run the victim care side of things in the state. So that's kind of how we're running things now until we get some better funding to do more.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you again, Mr. Scott and Mr. Cushman, for the work that you're doing here. And if when I asked, if my jaw dropped a little bit when you said yes, we are really the only resource. I apologize, but that took me off guard a little bit. That's a gut punch to know, and it makes the work that you're doing all the more important. So I'm curious, when you're training here and you're advocating here or in Cheyenne, what sort of other community groups and organizational partners are important to you? You know, mutual aid organizations or community support services or mental health providers.
Right.
And are there gaps in there that, you know, that members of our community can maybe help fill?
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest important thing is that we all try to reach in and fill those gaps. You know, I think we got a wonderful community where we have a great law enforcement community here. We work really closely with our law enforcement community. We work really closely with our fire community and first responders. And I think that's kind of a trend nationwide or statewide. I think there are some gaps when it comes to victim care. We have every community has a domestic violence sexual assault group, but they come in all shapes and sizes, and some of them have shelters and some of them don't. The ones that do are usually full, and the majority of them don't have a shelter. And the ones that do have a shelter are usually reserved or full, or they're reserved for sexual assault or domestic violence survivors or victims. And so we have a huge gap when it comes to short-term sheltering of survivors of human trafficking. We're working on grants to kind of overcome that right now, but we're a ways out. So we've taken in survivors in the past, and it sometimes takes up to at least 3 weeks in order for us to get them into a long-term housing facility. And 3 weeks in a hotel room is a lot of money that a small nonprofit organization like us can't really do. So there are some gaps that you're referring to that, yeah, it's hard. But yeah, there's some small gaps throughout each community in the state that needs to be addressed, but we are closing in on them, and we're all working on them together.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I've got a follow-up to Councilor Bowling's question. How many people did you house last year?
Not too many. Luckily, we only housed one late last fall.
Yep.
Yeah, late last fall.
Here, though, but around the state, were there more?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Shumway.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. To me, this is very discouraging. I look at this billion-dollar army that's coming into our country and with trafficking, and we seem to be fighting with it a few $1,000s. I think we need to do more than what you're doing. We need to get serious, and we need to make this unprofitable instead of profitable. I don't know how to do it. I'm sure you're putting your heads together, looking for ways to make more happen, but I just don't get a sense from this presentation that much of anything's happening. And we're not funded to do so, and we don't have the manpower to do so, and we need to get serious about doing it.
Well, yeah, and we are doing our best with what we have. I could tell you that we are fighting what we can in Cheyenne. We're working on some of the stuff that I talked about in the slides, such as that demand issue. Our goal is to reduce that demand, and if we can reduce demand, then we're taking a huge bite out of human trafficking. And that's where our goal lies right now, is if we can change some state statutes to make it a little bit more intense for buyers to purchase, a little bit more harder for them to purchase, and a little bit more scarier for them to purchase, then reduce it. And so there's small things that we're tackling at a time, but a big thing right now is funding, and we're going after that too. We are trying.
Councilor Vigil?
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. So I've always kind of known that a lot of human trafficking takes place right along the I-80 corridor, I-25 in Colorado. What does your communication and or collaboration look like with other statewide organizations that are not in Wyoming?
So we have a really good relationship with to the north. I know that's not answering your question, but we have a really good relationship with Montana. The Montana Attorney General's office and the Wyoming Attorney General's office are really seeing eye to eye on a lot of issues. We're kind of eyeing some of their state laws and kind of mimicking some of those, and then we're working on conference trainings together. We're working on hotlines together, so there's some interconnectivity there. Colorado is kind of set apart. They have their own hotline number. They have a lot of resources in Colorado, and reaching out to them to connect hasn't been that easy, but they have been a tremendous resource when we've called to ask for help. They've been available like that to be like, hey, call this person, and I have some of their personal phone numbers on my cell phone that I can call immediately saying, hey, I need shelter for this survivor. So it's not like they're not willing to help, they're just harder to blend together compared to our, even South Dakota we're working really close with, and Montana. Yep.
Justin and Mitch Cushman, I want to thank you both. Justin, I remember when you first presented to council and you were beginning this endeavor, and you've really stayed with it, and you've built an organization, you've given it structure and form, and I think sometimes the need can be overwhelming, but you take it one step at a time and continue building and continue speaking out and educating. And I really appreciate the work that you do. And thank you for coming and presenting to us tonight.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Right now, I'd like to ask, are there any public comments on this agenda item? Dr. Palmer?
Thank you. Again, Sally Palmer since 1982, but I have known here the incredible work of Safe House in Laramie. They've been steady. They've taken on different people. They will house who they can, but I know Safe House both on the west side and on campus. They don't give up, and on this campus, they will call the campus police if there's an incident. So all I want to say is when we work together, life is better for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Palmer. Any other comments? Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentation and for being here tonight. Next, we'll move on to our next work session, Laramie Police Department Annual Bias Crime Report. Chief Brown. Good evening, Chief Brown.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thanks for letting me speak to you tonight. And this is our annual bias crime report, and I'll jump right into it. Maybe. There we go. Okay. So City of Laramie Ordinance 9.08020 requires that the police department and the chief of police or his designee provide an annual report in regards to our bias crime collection and also our bias incidents within the city. I'll kind of get into the definitions here in a second. Some of the terms that I wanted to talk about is the UCR, the Uniform Crime Reporting System. That was previously the platform used by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to collect our statistics, not just in regards to bias crime, but to all violent crime and different classifications of crime. That program ended in 2021. And the majority of police departments transitioned into the NIBR system, which is the National Incident-Based Reporting System. It's another more robust data collection system provided by the federal government. I will talk some more a little bit later in the presentation about the actual statistics on who's providing those numbers. I do get asked a lot how accurate our data is. I can tell you with our CAD, our computer reporting system, and our records management system, our data that's reported to the Laramie Police Department is incredibly accurate. We have the ability to look at crimes and also keyword searches for specific terms related to these types of crimes, so we can give you accurate data. However, it is dependent on what's reported to us as a community. So if community members are not comfortable reporting crimes to the police department, then we may not have some of that data. Specifically, bias incidents are incredibly difficult to track. And the example I like to use is really if you go into the middle school or the high school. It's pretty typical to stand in those hallways or have your kids in those hallways and hear pretty derogatory statements consistently up and down those hallways. It's kind of a cultural thing, not just here in Laramie, but really across our nation. And a lot of those are not tracked. And that does not mean that people are not offended or that people are not desirous of reporting that. However, maybe they're uncomfortable to do so, or maybe the school district handles those situations from an administrative perspective. The last bullet point, our LARC division, our records division, is trained in managing both the old UCR system and the NIBR system. For about 3 years, there was a 3-year period where we were reporting to both. And I'll tell you, it's easier for smaller agencies to report these numbers because of the amount of reports that we actually have versus large agencies like LAPD, San Francisco PD. And I think just this last year, and I may be wrong on the agencies, but I believe San Francisco PD and Boston PD just came online with NIBRs. So that tells you that UCR ended in 2021, and until 2024 or the beginning of 2025, 2 significant large agencies in our nation weren't accurately reporting their data because they didn't have the ability to do so. So hate incidents, the definition's up there, hate crime, the definition's up there, and that's kind of what I just talked about. An incident is something that may not rise to the level of a crime. A lot of those terms and that type of speech is protected by the First Amendment. While people may be offended by the verbs or the verbiage used, or people may not agree with it, those individuals displaying that speech are still protected by the First Amendment. Now, when it rises to a specific level, in some situations it might be obscenity, defamation, true threats, incitement, or fighting words, it can rise to the level of a hate crime. And those are what we're documenting, both of those types of incidences. The UCR program definition is here, and it's still very similar to the NIBR's reporting system and the requirement that NIBR requires us to report. There's 2 new additions. One is here under gender identity, And the other one, I believe is the next slide, but it'll talk about perceived bias. So for 2024, these are the three potentially bias-related crime reports that we took. We didn't have any documented bias incidents reported. That doesn't mean that they're not occurring in our community. That means that they weren't reported to the Laramie Police Department. So these three instances, and I say potential because we don't know for sure, because two of them, we don't know the actual reason that the incident occurred because we didn't locate a suspect. So the first one I can confirm was a bias-related incident, and we ended up issuing citations to two individuals based on disorderly conduct and harassment type activity. I can tell you that the two individuals that were cited were not long-term residents of our community. The second one was a flag that was potentially vandalized, and we don't know this because it was at a home and there's no video available. The flag was found on the ground in a flower bed, and it was related to an LGBT community member. And we don't know if the wind took it off the flagpole, if it was knocked over, or if somebody went and threw it on the ground. There was no additional damage, it wasn't ripped, but based on the person claiming to be part of that community, we took it as a bias crime report. And we do that to give our friends on the federal side access to the report, and they can make the ultimate determination if it rises to their criteria or checks their boxes. The third incident was a vehicle vandalized, and again, we had a person, the victim, who claimed to be a member of the trans community, and their windshield wiper had been broken. They were not there when it occurred. There's no video camera available. We were unable to identify who a suspect may be, and we were unable to determine if it was actually related to their gender orientation. So these are our statistics from 2019 to 2024. I will note 2020, a lot of those incidents or those crime reports and incident reports, they revolved around the time of the George Floyd protests, which was pretty consistent with increases that we saw throughout the nation. The rest of the years, you can see it's pretty consistent from 0 to 3 over that same time period. Calls for service. So I added this in here to kind of put it in perspective of the three incidences that we had reported, the three crimes that we had reported. One for sure, two potential. We're talking in Albany County a total of 31,000 calls for service, very consistent with what we saw in 2023. However, you can see that the Laramie Police Department had approximately 2,000 additional calls in 2024, and the difference would be a decrease in the Albany County Sheriff's Department and a decrease in the fire department. And we expect to see an additional decrease potentially in the fire department due to the transition in ambulance service. So the only organization with a significant or statistically significant increase was the Laramie Police Department. And these are some national trends. So the national data usually comes in about a year after the reporting requirements are due. So for 2024, we'll see 2023 statistics, 2023, see 2022. There is a delay right now with the data that we're getting. We're seeing an estimated about 6 to 8 months on the federal government side, and a lot of that is because of the transition that we see going on with the federal government. A lot of employee transitions, a lot of reporting transitions, and a lot of what appears to be downsizing in some of these organizations that track these trends. So we expect there to be a significant potential reporting delay in next year's statistics. And we're even seeing that somewhat in this year's statistics. So some of the stuff that you'll see will be from 2022, but these were all in 2023. And of note, I made some notes in red, just to say that there was an increase in 2023 nationwide of approximately 228 bias-related crime incidents. And then the majority of the race-based crimes were against African Americans or anti-blacks. And then the majority of the religious-based crimes, which we even saw some incidents here in City Council that were reported, were anti-Jewish statements. And then the same thing with the LGBTQ community. Approximately 49% of those complaints, approximately half, were against gay men. And this goes into some of the further statistics from a federal website, and I'll allow you guys to take a look at this later. But it's pretty consistent with what we're seeing here, minus the race side of things. But as far as sexual orientation, religious-based incidences is pretty consistent across Wyoming and then also the nation. So this is what I was referring to early with the reporting requirements. So the NIBRS reporting requirements, this was last year, and I actually showed this slide during last year's presentation, and the next one we'll compare and contrast this year's data. But it's pretty consistent. Last year's estimation was that 50 to 70% of Wyoming organizations were reporting to NIBRS, and I think in the next slide it'll show that it's actually 74% this year. So not a huge increase. Once again, a lot of that is a financial-based decision for organizations. It's not that they don't want to report, but the software required to accurately report our data is a pretty expensive financial burden for these organizations in these cities, in these communities. It's the one that we use is a Tyler-based product. So before we went to the ERP system on the city side, we went to the CAD and the records management system on the police side. And once again, so here you go, you can see that still in California and Arizona, some pretty large agencies are not reporting. In New York, another huge population. New Jersey, another huge population. A lot of those agencies aren't reporting. So when you're looking at federal statistics as to whether or not violent crime is going up or down, it's very hard to articulate if it's accurate or not, because you have big entities still not reporting with huge populations that are underrepresented in those areas.
Chief, I have a question
Sure.
from the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Chief, are they using the old, so they're not reporting on NIBRS, haven't transitioned over yet, but are they utilizing the old system still? So can you kind of piece together the two data things?
Through you, Mayor, Council Mayor, or Vice Mayor, I apologize. Yes, the problem is like bias-related crimes specifically, they're able to report biased crimes, but they can't dissect what they are and what category they fall under. So that's strictly a new NIBRS requirement. So a lot of the violent crime data it's complicated. So with the new NIBRS system, they actually break it down by individual and crime. So you can have an individual that completes multiple crimes, like say it's a burglary in progress that ultimately leads to a homicide. That would be documented as a burglary, potentially a carjacking, and then a homicide. So you would have 3 separate crimes, which is the way it would be prosecuted. With the old system, it would only have the highest crime, so it would have the homicide. So a lot of those crimes were underreported. So when you have the transition to the new system, you can see crime spiking because a lot of those first, second, or third violations that ultimately would lead to the major violation or the last violation weren't reported, and now they are. So once everybody transitions to the new system, you'll probably see another little spike because the majority of the nation has transitioned. And then once you have that, it should be consistent year over year, or at least have an accurate depiction of the increases.
Councilor Newman.
Since you talked about the software, I thought I would ask this question that I fielded online, and it's a two-part question. Do you happen to know the cost of the reporting software?
Through you, Mayor, Council Member, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if the city manager recalls, but I believe it was in the ballpark of, I think it was 3.8 million, if I recall correctly. And it was done before I got here. The agreement was signed, but I think that's in the ballpark of it. So significant cost to the community.
And then their follow-up question, this is from constituents, was what's the cost to put this report together for you now?
Sure. Through you, Mayor, Council Member, it's just manpower, maybe 2 hours. So it's very easy for us to pull data out of our system now. The new system is very robust and has a lot of capabilities of pulling data. It's pretty consistent that I'll get asked by a community member, maybe a member of council, human trafficking task force for data regarding a specific crime, and we can actually pull that data relatively quickly within a few hours, if not minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Continue.
So Mayor, lastly, if I could, these are some community considerations. And I would always encourage anybody who has any situation that they think might rise to the level of a bias incident, even if they just want to talk to us about a situation, I would request that they contact us and let us make a determination as to whether or not a report would be required per the city ordinance. And what that gives us the ability to do is make sure that we're accurately tracking to the best of our ability these crimes and incidents as they occur. And then there's a website at the bottom. There's also some federal entities that they can reach out to and report these types of incidences and crimes, and then they will reach out to us and ask us to take a local report. And I'll stand for any questions.
Questions? Councilor Lockhart?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks so much, Chief, for coming in and explaining everything. One thing I noticed, which I think is, I gotta hit this thing. Not a whole lot of bias or hate crimes, which means there's a whole lot of other things going on. But I'm glad that you don't see a lot of these anyway. Yes. Right?
Through you, Mayor, council member, yes. I will say that nationwide, the amount of crimes that are actually reported, there's approximately 240 million 911 calls every year across the nation, and about 11,500 bias-related crimes associated with those calls. If you look at the percentages, it's 0.005% of the crimes that we investigate as a national law enforcement force are bias-related.
Answer comments? Councilor Bowling? Councilor Bowling?
And thank you, Chief. And I'm just curious, when your officers or someone from the Sheriff's Department or the university, when they make a determination between a bias-related incident and obviously a bias-related crime is going to have significant follow-up steps. Are there steps that are follow-ups that our local law enforcement take when a determination of an incident is made?
Through you, Mayor, council member, it depends on the incident, and it's a contributing factor. So I'll give you an example of the terms that were used in this venue last year when we reported them, and then we created an ongoing report. So last year's incident report was the first one. I believe there was an ongoing report associated and sent to our federal partners. So that is a bias incident. It's not a crime to make derogatory statements during a council meeting. At least the ones that were made to the Jewish community. So there, I actually reached out to the local rabbi myself and had a conversation with him and made him aware of the comments. And we also communicated over the ongoing issues in the Middle East. But we also reported that to our local fusion center. So Wyoming has two Department of Criminal Investigations. I believe it's two representatives. They have an investigator who's a supervisor, and then also a criminal analyst that work in Cheyenne. And they work with our Denver Regional Fusion Center to coordinate any threats going on in the state on the federal side. So those can be bias-related incidents, criminal threats, terrorist threats, so any of those types of incidents that get vetted by the feds, our federal partners, go through that fusion center. So for that incident, I reported it to them, and then every ongoing one I was able to give them the communication, the meeting YouTube link, and they actually tied it to a group out of San Francisco and said that they were sending similar council letters to their council members there and across the nation that some of our council members received. So yes, it depends on the incident, and it depends if there's any criminal history. It depends on the type of investigation that we're doing. Can we associate it with a bias-related crime? And if not, we document that for purposes of potential future investigations.
Councilor Newman?
I saw a lot of discussion about this on Facebook today, and went down a rabbit hole after I read all the comments online, and it seems like a lot of these do go unreported. And I know I was reading the bullet point up there, you don't have to give your name or contact information or anything like that to report something, but are there other ways that this could, other than the website that you mentioned, are there other ways that these citizens who think that they are a victim of this could report it to not an officer because maybe they're scared of officers or they think the officer is the problem per se. Because the research that I didn't see a lot of that. So maybe it's something, and maybe you know of some others, but maybe it's something that we can look at as council to find different ways to. But
Through you, Mayor, council member, I would challenge the community and say that we have a great relationship with all of our council members, all of our city officials, and they are welcome to report to any of those individuals, and it'll make it our way, and we will document it in that fashion. So it's not just the police department. I would hope that we're doing enough on our community relations side, and I believe we have a significant footprint in the community to encourage those people to feel comfortable with their officers. But we're willing to go talk to anybody that we can, and I can tell you that I was asked a question by somebody regarding an incident recently, and that person that I was asked the question by, or that had made the comment, I have a significant relationship with, and I hadn't heard about it before today. So sometimes I don't know if it's just a relationship or a comfort issue with law enforcement officers, as much of it is a cultural norm where maybe we're just conditioned to accept those types of terms. And I like to use the Super Bowl. I'm a big football fan, watched the Super Bowl, and they had a performer at halftime using pretty significant derogatory type terms. And I haven't gotten a report on it. And so I think a lot of that is just ingrained in us to accept those in certain situations, whether people are protesting, maybe an artist using that type of language. But in my professional opinion, I don't think it's appropriate in any format.
Councilor O'Doherty?
When you were speaking about the cost of the system, we were talking about the ERP, not just, I just want to make it clear to anybody in the community that thinks that we spent millions of dollars on something to report the 3 biased crimes. The National Incident-Based Reporting System is for reporting it's how you record things so that for your record, so you know what kinds of crimes. You can look at trends pretty easily now, right? Now that we have the ERP. So if you saw robberies increasing in some neighborhood or something, am I right with that? Is that how it works?
Through you, Mayor, council member, yes, it is actually the software that we use for everything that we do in police work. So it tracks all of our reports, stores, houses all of our reports, coordinates all of our calls for service, our dispatch system, our computer systems in our cars, all of that is incorporated in that system. And the reason that we had to go to a new system wasn't solely because of NIBRS. It was because the last system that we had was obsolete, can't use it anymore. We're not even able to pull data from that system in the same way that we could before. We had to hire a third-party contractor to be able to transfer that data from that obsolete system and put it in a new system so that we have access to it.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Just the online reporting tool that the city has, can that be anonymous? Can people report through that anonymously? I don't know.
Through you, Mayor and Vice Mayor, yes. So that system is actually intended for police complaints, and it can be reported anonymous, and there's an option in there to go straight to the city manager's office, and it doesn't even go to the police department.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief, for your presentation, and I appreciate that you took the time tonight to distinguish between incidents versus crime, and that the city ordinance requires that the LPD report both incidents and crime. And I further appreciate you reaching out to the public and asking that they feel comfortable to report, and that an incident does not need to rise to the level of a crime to be reported. And we are interested in tracking these incidents, and I would encourage the public to report. There are ways to do that, either directly or indirectly and anonymously, and it will help us in our future work. So it would be a contribution for you to do that. Thank you very much for your report tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And now I ask, are there any comments from the public on this agenda item?
Mayor, you have a hand raised from Linda Devine.
I was thinking I would. If you could bring her in, please. Good evening, Ms. Devine. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First of all, I just want to applaud the chief and the work that he's doing. I have a lot of respect for him. We've had the opportunity to meet a few times and discuss things, and he is someone that I trust when I'm concerned about some things, and so I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that. I do want to mention, though, and I think it's been touched on, how accurate the bias incident reports is, because I know that things do happen in the community that aren't always reported, and it sounds like y'all are addressing some of the different things to try and help people feel more comfortable. I think sometimes when we talk about bias incidents and bias crime, people can be very harmed without a crime being committed. And so I think that's really important for us to continue to acknowledge and try to track the different things. And I understand that, we are a country of free speech, at least for now. That could change, who knows? But, and folks are going to make derogatory remarks towards other folks. And it is within the right and it's legal. But I wonder if there are more things that we can do in our community to just more education, more unity, community. I think some of y'all know that for the last few weeks, there's been a group of us congregating at the courthouse on Fridays, and we've tried to keep this as a rally of sorts that is more geared towards loving our community and supporting our community as opposed to protest. I've really encouraged the folks that are out there to stay focused on the issues and not engage in any negative feedback that happens. I will say, though, and I'm sure, I think some of y'all did see my post on Facebook, that some of the harassment is getting more challenging as we stand out there. We've been called the N-word. We've had cans, bottles thrown at us, and I'm really proud of the group, though, that they are remaining calm. But it's just something that I hope that y'all will realize, that we do need to just try to keep working together and getting accurate data. Thank you so much. And again, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Further comments? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Chief Brown. And now we go on to our next work session, Albany Care Team Mental Health Response Program. Good evening, Kristen.
Mayor and council members, thank you. Sorry, I thought it was on. Apologize. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy, for getting it going. So this evening I wanted to visit a little bit about Volunteers of America. So we are part of the ACT team, and so I want to give you some background on some of our services that will maybe paint a picture for you about our ACT program as well. Our vision at VOA is everyone living in the fullness of a healthy mind, body, and spirit. So we're very holistic in how we approach individuals, both for our staff members and also for our clients. So really looking at how do we wrap around those individuals to provide them with the support that they need. As part of that, you will see here that we operate in Wyoming, Montana, and South Dakota. So this map gives you kind of a quick overview of what we have and the variety of services that we have. Obviously, tonight I'm not going to touch base on all of them, but I do want to highlight that here in Wyoming, we operate community mental health centers in 9 different counties. So we are the largest within the state of Wyoming. So we're here in Laramie, we're also in Cheyenne and Torrington and Wheatland. We were part of Peak Wellness Center, if you remember that, years ago, and I was part of that merge then 3.5 years ago. As part of that then, we have expanded up to Newcastle, Sundance, Gillette, Sheridan, and Buffalo. So those 9 different towns are where we host our clinics at. We do operate 24/7, so while we don't have officers out on the streets, we do offer remote work and support for our individuals. So during the daytime, we have on-call case managers that help triage anybody who's walking in or calling into our clinic that's having a crisis, whether that's a client, a potential client, or maybe that's a family member or concerned citizen that's reaching out to us for that support. After hours, we have 2 clinicians that cover all 9 of our counties across the state. So they triage any calls that are coming in, respond to those individuals, and provide that support then. Our outpatient services looks like 6 different dimensions at a kind of a minimum with things. And I won't go into super detail, but I do want to highlight our therapy services include individual, family, and groups. We provide that for mental health and substance abuse. So we offer mental health groups, and we also have intensive outpatient programming, which is a part of our substance abuse programming. So we offer groups to our clients that operate 9 hours a week at a minimum for that outpatient services. COVID taught us that we can use remote services, so we access our clinicians across all 9 of our counties to provide that support and that IOP programming for individuals, both during the daytime and evening groups as well, so to try to provide that diversity for them. We provide a variety of case management support for our individuals. Individuals that are coming in, our clients, can provide or receive a case management assessment, and as part of that, we can set goals to help them define and to know what do they want to work on, what are their needs, and what are the resources that they need within the community. We provide skills training, and skills training is about wrapping around that individual. What do we need to help provide and support them with to help them become more independent within their community? So this may look like housekeeping. This doesn't mean that we go in and do the housekeeping for them, but we go in and we join them in identifying what do they need to do within their home so that they can pass, maybe it's their apartment inspections or maintain living in their environment. And so we help them break down step by step what helps support them in gaining that level of independence. As part of that too, we have peer specialists. Peer specialists, we do not have here in the southern region, but we do have via telehealth. Those are individuals that have lived mental health and or substance abuse experience and have been in recovery for at least 2 years. So they're individuals that have that lived experience. They can say, yes, I've been through this and I can help wrap around you for that support. So they work cohesively with that treatment team. In addition, we have medication providers. We have 3 of them that operate out of Cheyenne, and they do come over here to Laramie. 2 of them do once a month. That was agreement that we made a couple of years ago, and that's been very exciting to have them do that, and hope that they're able to continue to do that because they do service all 9 of our counties and our inpatient facilities too. So they're serving hundreds of clients because, as we all know, we do not have enough mental health support. I'll touch base on gatekeeping here in a minute. I want to highlight some of the different programs that we have as well. We have a domestic violence offenders program. This is unique to the state of Wyoming, to my knowledge. We have 3 clinicians that help serve this program. So they have gone through certification. They can do special domestic violence clinical assessments to help support our individuals that are in that offenders program. They can receive programming then for 13, 26, or 52 weeks, and then graduate from that program, and hopefully are successful members within our communities. We also have had the opportunity over the last couple of years to be involved with plans of safe care, and this was a system and a program that kicked off a couple of years ago in terms of conversations and is now up and running in Cheyenne. They're also working on it being here in Laramie as well. We're going through the MOU process with it. This is working collaboratively with our community partners to help support mothers and families with substance abuse struggles, so they can move into this program to help wrap around them for that support and have access not only to us at VOA, but a variety of other community supports. I do want to highlight too that in Cheyenne, we have mental health crisis stabilization, and this is for our southern region. So while it's not here in Laramie, we do have the ability as needed and as we are able to provide it to support clients here in Laramie with getting over to Serenity Place for that crisis stabilization. So we've had a number of clients through our gatekeeping program that have been able to access this. We use this also too to help prevent people from having to go in to be hospitalized, or as they're transitioning out of the hospital, they need additional wraparound and support. They can go for up to 14 days generally over to Serenity Place to receive that stabilization. This is an optional program, so engagement and treatment is needed. They're not mandated to be there. They're not court ordered or anything like that or detained to be there. They have to choose to want to be in that level of treatment. We have some housing options available in Cheyenne that I'd like to highlight as well. We have Mirror Lake Manor, which is a shared living environment. So if we have clients here in Laramie, we can help service them in Cheyenne if they're willing to move over there. So we do have clients that move between our counties to help provide that support and across our state. We have Logan Manor, which is individual low-income housing apartments that are available for individuals to have access, and they can then work closely with our outpatient team. And we also have Creekside Cottage. This is a 24-hour staffed facility, and we can have 6 clients in there at a time. So as you can imagine, we build a wait list for this facility because individuals there need that wraparound. They cannot live independently on their own, so we want to provide that support to them. I apologize, I pulled off the one that was for Laramie. Here in Laramie, we have 31 different apartments available in a combination of 3 different apartment complexes across town. So we have some south of Grand and some north of Grand that we can help provide that support to individuals. What's neat about that in particular is that we have our Snowy View apartments, where we have 11 different apartments that are low-income housing. Clients that are there have to be a part of our outpatient services. So we clinically approve them to move into those apartments so that my team can help provide them wraparound support. Individuals that are there can provide and receive not only case management skills training in the outpatient services, but we also provide medication monitoring. So there are individuals that can't always remember to take their medications at the right times, and they just need that additional support. And so my clinical team operates out of that facility 7 days a week, once to twice a day in that wraparound. So yes, it's a lot of involvement with those individuals because we want to help keep them in our communities and help them become as successful and independent as possible. At some of our other locations and counties, we have substance abuse treatment for both males and females. So up in Sheridan, we have a whole grand campus that's available up there with several acres to help support inpatient substance abuse for males and females. In Cheyenne, we're very excited that we're building a legacy building south of our clinic there in Cheyenne. If you're familiar, across from the cemetery on Seymour Avenue, we're building a huge legacy building that will hopefully be open at the end of March, and we invite, if you're interested in coming over, we can set up for tours of that. What's very exciting about that legacy building is that we will have beds available inpatient for substance abuse for males and females. So 24 beds for males and 16 beds for females. If anybody remembers, Peak Wellness Center used to offer this about 10 years ago or so, and then we lost funding for it, and we're no longer able to offer those beds for females down here in the southern region. We have had those beds available up in Sheridan, but it's very exciting to be able to have those more locally to serve this region. So that's an exciting thing that we have available. We also there will have social detox. So we'll move in our beds there for both males and females, and we'll move in our crisis stabilization beds. Right now, our Serenity Place is operating out of a duplex, and a 2-story duplex, and that's not very safe for people to be there. So we're very excited for them to be moving in, and we'll increase our beds from 8 to 12 beds for that crisis stabilization. So I really highlight those things in that we're focused on what are the regional services that we can provide, not just here in Laramie, but we tap into what are resources that we have in other counties as well. I want to highlight too that we offer veteran services for our clients, and that operates in all 3 of our states. And we have veteran services members that come over from Cheyenne to help support any of our veterans. These are for our veterans' families. Maybe it's wraparound case management that they need. Maybe it's help with housing, utilities, etc., to set them up for success. And they work closely with the VA as well. We also have youth services available. We took over 2-3 years ago now, I think it was, the contract that Cathedral Home had in Carbon County. So in Rollins, we have crisis stabilization there for youth, a group home. And also up in Sheridan, we have a group home that's available up there for youth to provide that support. We do provide youth services in our outpatient as well. We also have low-income senior housing available. So in Torrington, Sheridan, and up in Billings, we have an apartment complex available in each of those towns to help support seniors. So we have conversations sometimes with our clients that if they're not looking to stay here in Laramie long-term, we have access to those other resources for them. Also want to highlight that we have ministry services available. These are available for our clients and for our staff members. So we have a ministry coordinator who's in Cheyenne, who has volunteers that works in the southern region, and then they also have a whole team that's up north as well that can provide that support. It's optional for clients. It is heavily Christian-based, but does not have to be solely Christian-based. It's to support any spiritual needs that are needed of that individual. It is an optional service that's available, again, for our clients and for our staff members. So we have ministry members that might come around and provide that support and programming for the clients, but then also can be there. We, here in Albany County in particular, experienced the death of one of my clinicians this fall, and so we did have that ministry support that was available for our staff members to have access to as well. So I want to talk about our gatekeeping program. I believe this is entirely unique to the state of Wyoming. I'm not aware of our other 22 counties having anything that's like this available. This is kudos to our county for having this in place. This was in place when I came 5 years ago, and is an exciting program that is helped and funded by our county commissioners. As part of this, individuals that are at that high risk that have been detained on that Title 25 move into this program via the court system. So these are it's not everyone who is detained that moves into this program. These are the high risk individuals that have been identified at the hospital or identified by us at the community level that we say, okay, this individual needs a lot of wraparound support. We want to move them into this program. When they're in this program, they work with Megan Jackson, who is my gatekeeper and also my lead case manager here in town. As part of that program, she wraps around those individuals and follows them for up to 2 years. She works very closely with them to make sure that they are engaged in our community resources. They can receive support from us at VOA or any other partners that they want in the community. And so she has that follow-up and connection with them. She provides court update letters to the courts every 3 months to let them know how that individual is doing. So it's that wraparound, it's that accountability, that team effort that happens with things. And then she does provide a court update report to our Albany County Mental Health Board every quarter as well regarding her contacts with things. We certainly always encourage that if individuals are in this program or if you know of somebody connected with it, to always reach out to us. If it's a crisis situation or any concerns that you have, that helps that update us at VOA as to what's happening with those individuals so we can provide that support for them. Here's a slide on the housing options here in Laramie. So we have Snowy View, Eagle Ridge, and Cottonwood Place for a total of 31 apartments. If you've driven by these apartments in the past and then driven by them in the last year or so, you've seen that they have been renovated inside and out. So they're brand new looking, and which is very impressive, and we're very excited to have. It's been a huge transition that has happened, and we've received some significant funding to make that happen. We're very excited about that so that our clients have safe, new places to be able to live in. So the ACT program, the reason why you're all wanting to hear from me this evening, hopefully, to talk here about the Albany Care Team. This is an exciting program that kicked off due to Chief Brown bringing this to VOA almost 2 years ago. So April of 2023, he had some conversations that I think even started out of City Council potentially, and helped shift into us having a conversation with VOA, as well as with UW Police Department and the Sheriff's Department. So to me, this is pretty phenomenal and speaks to the diversity that we have here in Laramie and how serious we are about collaborating. This is not something that I know of that's happening in any other county or even close by states in terms of having 3 law enforcement agencies come together with mental health to say, let's collaborate together and let's devise a program that's going to be helpful and beneficial for the community. So as a result of this, we kicked off January 29th of 2024. Sorry, there's an error on there, I put 25. So we've been at this for a little over a year now, which has been very exciting to have up and operational. Again, a direct result of everyone coming together to say we want to be a part of this, and thanks to all of you at the City Council as well for helping to provide funding for that. To me, that's what's really important, is that not only do people say I want to be a part of this, but I'm also going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to contribute to it, and I'm going to invest. So all 3 law enforcement agencies have invested the same amount each year and committed to this program, which to me, again, gives me goosebumps. Pretty powerful to have that happen. So to break it down a little bit for you, we have had 73 referrals of individuals since the initiation of this program and it kicking off. And something to keep in mind when this program kicked off, and I'm going to have Heather come join me in a minute here. When it kicked off, Heather was able to go through that first week, the CIT program. So she has been through the CIT program. She's been heavily involved with our CIT training and has done traveling with us for conferences, and also went to Moore, Oklahoma with us back in April. So she's had the opportunity to not only learn what are we doing locally, but then we've also had experience from Oklahoma as well. In fact, her and I both traveled to Oklahoma with some of our other CIT members last April. And what was really neat as part of that process is that we went and spent 5 hours with a community behavioral health center there that is a certified one. And as part of that, they gave up their time. I sat with their leadership for 5 hours. Heather had the opportunity to go out with their crisis response team as well for a live crisis. And so we were able to gain knowledge from that. And that is thanks to Sheriff Appelhans having funding for CIT programming, because we were out there for a CIT training, and they got us connected then with the local community mental health center too. So we've been able to maximize on a lot of different opportunities and resources through that. So since our program kicked off a little over a year ago, we have 73 people that have been referred into the program. Over 60 of them are currently active that Heather is touching base with, keeping tabs on, whether it's regular contact or every once in a while, whatever's kind of needed. She has those individuals open and providing that contact to them. She also attends meetings up at BHS, so she closely works with Megan, who is our gatekeeper that I brought up earlier. Megan and Heather have been closely working together. Heather actually was our gatekeeper for a number of years and transitioned into this position and has helped train Megan in this position too. So they work closely together that way, as well with Nico up at BHS. So there's a whole team and coordination that happens with this. In addition, she's been able to do some co-response on calls as well and works collaboratively with all 3 law enforcement agencies. We've been very appreciative of the fact that all 3 law enforcement agencies have provided offices for Heather. So she's embedded in their agencies. She can go and set up for time to be there to work and build those relationships. So that works then on building those connections with those officers that we have too. This gives you just a brief overview and a look at referrals that she has made. So not only is she referring them to VOA, but if clients say, nope, I don't want to work with VOA, or I have a private person that I already work with, that's excellent. We want to help back that and support that. We don't want to take anybody from who they're already working with within this community. We want to provide that wraparound support and make sure that they're having their needs met and they have access to the resources that they need. She also then can provide a number of referrals to different places, including Serenity Place. So we've been able to help support with getting people to Serenity Place as appropriate. Sometimes people decline some of those options and refuse that, but she does offer to a variety of different services within the community. So as I mentioned earlier, our connection of the ACT program is very closely tied in with the CIT program. So this picture was from last January when Heather again went through the CIT program. So she has a lot of experience with that, has been able to attend CIT conferences as well, both at the state level and the national level. So she's been heavily involved with a number of different pieces, and I've had the opportunity to travel with her on these as well. So it's neat for us to have that collaborative effort. Can't stress enough how amazing it is to have a community and law enforcement that are so supportive of mental health, and to have the support of the city council as well with that. So I'm going to invite Heather to come up here. Some additional background about Heather is that I started working with Heather 5 years ago when I moved over here to Albany County to take over literally during COVID, March of COVID, took over this county as the clinic director, and Heather was a case manager at the time. And within a couple of months, I needed to make changes, and I asked her to step into a gatekeeping position, and she agreed to it, and was our gatekeeper for 3.5 years, and that was phenomenal, having her there, build those connections and those relationships. When we started talking about the ACT program, I asked her if she had any interest, and she did, and so I was very excited by that because she's somebody that I trust. Both the gatekeeper and the ACT her as the community crisis case manager report directly to me. So as you can imagine, I want to have people that I trust because they're out in the community, maintaining our relationships and interacting with people in crisis. So I'm going to have her come up here and share a little bit about her background too.
Dr. Cavillo, I'm wondering, before Heather comes up, if I can just pause and see, does anyone have any questions or comments? Councilor Lockhart?
Thank you, Mayor.
Microphone.
Thank you for being a part of that.
You bet you. Thank you, Kristen, for coming in and explaining this. This is very informational. Earlier, I was looking at the Domestic Violence Offenders Program. It just caught my eye because you had groups for 13, 26, or 52. Are those court mandated, or they are voluntary by the offender?
Great question. So courts and judges may mandate that somebody come to us for an assessment, and through that domestic violence assessment, when that clinician completes it, they provide recommendations, and then they may be required to complete whatever those recommendations are. Somebody can voluntarily come through as well, but most of them are court mandated.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. You said comments as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. This is just, I love hearing the information and seeing the progress that has been made already in just a year on this. And just thank you for your work, and Chief and Heather, and look forward to hearing more from Heather, but this is really exciting. So thank you.
And we'll continue with Heather Lacey.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you all.
Good evening, Heather.
Good
Thank you for
evening.
being here.
Thank you for letting me share some more about the program. So through the Albany Cares Team program, we've been able to help many individuals in our community who are dealing with mental health challenges that we may not have had contact with otherwise. Through law enforcement referrals and co-responses, many of Laramie's vulnerable residents have been connected with and have received mental health support. For example, one individual that I've worked with was experiencing a mental health crisis. They came to the Laramie Police Department, and I happened to be there in the office. I was able to connect with her, and then she became an Albany Cares Team client. She's since made encouraging progress. She's been engaging in mental health services, applying for disability, and connecting with community resources for food and housing. These interventions help to ensure that clients are receiving wraparound support in our community, which strengthens our community as a whole. Did anyone have any questions for me?
Councilor O'Doherty?
My question is, does Heather have supernatural powers? I'm so happy to hear about all the things that you've managed to pull off. And this was just like a little sparkle in our eye back in 2020, and to see that you're bringing this to fruition and helping so many people. We're just incredibly grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments at this time? Councilor Vigil?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, both Heather and Kristen, for being here tonight. In my day job, I work in the Dean of Students office at the university, so I've had a lot of face time with VOA over the past year and a half, 2 years, and I'm just continually impressed. I think it's oftentimes a relief for us just to have such a willing, a consistent, and reliable partner here in Albany County to help University of Wyoming students, and then obviously any resident here in Laramie as well. And so I just think, anytime I've ever had to, mostly for my colleagues to know, anytime I've ever had to email someone at VOA, anytime they're always willing to do these kinds of presentations, it's just been a really positive experience for me. And so that's something I want the public to know as well, because I think they're just an incredible resource for our communities.
Councilor Bowling?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Heather, very much, and thank you, Christian, very much. Really just a comment. Although we've had 3 very distinct presentations tonight, it's not lost on me that there's commonalities in the underlying principles of healthy communities that everybody that works on each of these programs independently holds at their heart. And that in some cases there's going to be connections. And I'm just, I'm a little bit at a loss for words, both impressed and a little emotional that there are the sheer amount of people dedicated to community health and well-being across many different sectors that we have here in Laramie and Albany County. And so I would just, again, commend every single one of our guests and presenters tonight for the work that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Councilor Lockhart?
little follow-up. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you again. Along Councilor Bowling's statement, mental health 10 years ago was one of those words that I didn't ever even take serious or, take into consideration for myself or anybody else. I thought it was just kind of I don't know what the term was, but especially after COVID and seeing what people went through, just the isolation. And then I think us being a college town, we see a lot of situations where maybe a community that doesn't have college kids sees. So along his statement to have these 3 different presentations, and there is some underlying commonalities, and I think, mental health being one of them, and to have a community that is so forged and a state so forged into taking care of people, I appreciate that. I appreciate taking time to educate us, because there's things I've learned that I had no idea about, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I just want to say thank you very much, both of you. I have had both the opportunity and the privilege to work with Heather, with Kristen, and the chief, and other law enforcement on the Albany County Mental Health Board. Many of these ideas were hatched during discussion, and I just think that we have worked well together to create an increasingly seamless mental health approach to working with our community, starting with the gatekeeping, then with CIT training of our officers, which is more than double the national average, and then now with the ACT program. I think it's amazing that our town has been able to pull together, and I'm at these meetings, and I know that each of our heads of each law enforcement show up regularly at these meetings and fully participate. So there's not a slacker among anybody. And I appreciate the work, the vision, and the movement that is happening. There are so many things happening and so many more opportunities that are going to be available for our community in the future. Thank you for your work, your devotion, and your dedication.
Thank you.
I'll ask, are there any public comments on this agenda item at this time? All right. Thank you very much for your participation tonight. It's much appreciated. Now, we will move on to City Council updates. Councilor Bowling, would you like to start, or do you want me to start at the other side, since I started with you last time?
That's okay. I can go, Mayor. Thank you. Just 2 quick updates. On the 12th, I was able to attend the board meeting for the Laramie Rifle Range. Things of note to report. The good financial status. There's going to be a work weekend for members of the range, and also open to members of the public, volunteer, sort of a work weekend, the last weekend in March, to work on some improvements, mostly to like bird abatement in some of the shooting sheds, some repair work that needs to happen. And so as soon as I get details on that, I will make sure to share with the rest of council. There's also going to be a women's program, a women's short 22 rifle program in May, and as soon as I get confirmation on those exact dates, I will also share that. I believe it is not limited just to members, paying members of the range, but also other members of the public that might be interested in participating. So as I get those updates, I will keep you informed. My last update is that I was able to just not last week, but the week before, attend the first of my 4 trainings with the police department for the Police Advisory Board. And I will be scheduling the other 4 shortly, and want to make sure that council members know that they are able to attend and participate in those trainings. And then I will just say, as on a personal note, it was an incredibly informative and sort of eye-opening training experience for me. And in particular, and I know because Mr. Cushman was just here, the trainings done by Sergeants Cushman and Lenhart were thorough and attentive, and they're just both not only excellent community officers, but incredible educators. And so if you have a chance to attend those upcoming trainings, I will keep you posted as to when they're scheduled for myself. There'll be a board meeting for the Police Advisory Board next month. So that's it for now.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Vigil?
Thank you. Yeah, my big update for the council tonight is I am looking for someone under the age of 25 for the Human Rights and Relations Commission. I've had a few promising conversations with some folks over the past couple of weeks, and none of them have really panned out. And so this is maybe a call out to you all. If you know of anyone, I would love, I'm going to do some pushes out on social media as well, but I thought I could real quickly. Yes, Brandon.
Email.
Did my daughter put in for that? Because she said she was going to.
I haven't seen anything come through.
I will get on Maddie's butt about it.
Yeah, would
Maybe
love to
we
have
found
her
you someone.
application. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Is there a minimum age requirement? Does it need to be individuals over the age of 18? But under the age of 25?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
But let me double check. I'll get back to you.
Melanie? Counselor?
Counselor Shumway? Oh, excuse me.
Could you send
Counselor Lockhart?
Thank you. Could you send an email out?
Yes.
So then I would approach my staff, because outside of 2, I have 25 people that are under the age of 25.
I know.
So, and a lot of them are looking for some community-type service things to do, and so I would share that with them. Who knows?
I would love that, Counselor Lockhart. I appreciate it. I work with people under the age of 25 every single day, so I'm confused.
Thank you. Counselor Shumway?
Thank you, Mayor. I have one community update. The Laramie High School men's swimming program, I think, won their 9th consecutive state championship.
Oh.
So congratulations to them. That's all I have.
Thank you. Counselor O'Doherty?
No updates, but I'm not really hoarding the chocolate, so just come get it.
I
just
think
thought
that
it would
goes
be
to the mayor's
easier.
drawer.
Yeah, okay. No updates.
Counselor Lockhart?
Thank you. Looking at next week's agenda, 3 of these items are items that I've already seen presentations on at the Planning Commission. So I'm looking forward to discussion, and I would love for you guys to reach out to me on any questions, because number 1 is 17, then 18. Both of those were discussed last night. And then number 19, because I have some strong opinions. And so I'd like to get feedback before the meeting, if you have any questions or comments, so we could collaborate on them. And I want you to know my feelings before we get into it. And the community, some of the community talking points. So I've really enjoyed being on the Planning Commission, because it seems like every time they have something and it gets passed, of course, I've seen it, so I have a little bit more background on it. So it's been real helpful. So that's really all I have as far as that goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Newman?
I have the LCBA meeting tomorrow that the mayor is going to attend for me. I can only zoom in for about 5 minutes. I have another meeting at the same time, so we'll get an update from the mayor on that next time.
Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. Our DDA meeting was canceled, and so we have our next one on next Monday, I believe. So that is around the corner, and an upcoming beautification committee meeting also. And I appreciate Councilor Lockhart reaching out to get feedback and thoughts on this. I just want to remind folks, if we have too much reaching out and getting thoughts on this, Nancy can fill us in about the parameters around reaching out and getting thoughts on.
Yeah. Open meetings laws, I believe, is what you're referring to, and so, yeah,
Do you call each other?
it's sequential communication, just keep that in mind, whether it's verbal or in writing. If you're making decisions behind the scenes, the public have the right to hear the discussion and deliberation that leads to your decision. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you have questions, though, I'd encourage you to reach out to Bob and ask him if in his opinion, if you're okay, Did that help?
Yes.
And I really like the idea, though, so.
Anything further? Let's see. I attended the airport board meeting last Wednesday, and they are currently working on the final version and have passed the airport policy and updated procedures. They also are working on updating the leases, which have not been updated actually in decades. And so our lease agreements are terribly behind. So they are trying to get that updated to negotiate with members and that type of thing. The mental health board meeting was canceled and rescheduled into March. I had a meeting with about 8 ministers from different churches here who are looking at an adult daycare so that primary care, that care providers, home care providers, such as spouses, partners, et cetera, could drop them off so that they can go to an appointment, see the doctor, get their hair done, something like that. So that was interesting. They're trying to pull together community members into this group and exploring possible locations and grants and things like that. So it's in the very early stages. The Board of Health met on Thursday. We were without a quorum due to unforeseen circumstances, so we plan to have a special meeting in March to discuss some public outreach and education ideas that the board has. And then I'll be attending the Laramie Business Chamber Business Alliance tomorrow for Councilor Newman. And that's it for me. Yes. Councilor Lockhart.
I forgot, thank you. Going back to the Planning Commission yesterday, city planner, they gave a video yesterday, a presentation, because they know everyone wants to be more transparent. And so what they did is just a brief summarization of what the previous Planning Commission meeting was about. And they're going to try to do something like that so the public can chime in versus sitting through a 2-hour meeting to gauge some interest. Maybe they can go in, watch this video, have it on social media, see the topics discussed, what happened, and all in the name of transparency. And it was their first test run, so it was poorly edited, they know, but they just were looking for feedback, and I thought it was great. So, but you share it? I don't have it. It was just what they presented yesterday to us, but they wanted feedback from the commission. And most of them were like, yeah, let's just do it. They've got some work to do, but I think it's great to be able to kind of give you some cliff notes of what happened. So I think it was a great idea.
Thank you for that update.
Yes.
And I would comment that many of our boards and commissions are working on public outreach, engagement, and education. And I believe that the seed money that we provided them in order to do these activities has really energized the members of these boards and commissions. And secondly, I think the task of asking boards and commissions to review council goals and derive their board or commission goals based on council goals has also further energized the board and helped to make them feel connected to our mission, to the mission of the council and the mission of the city. So I think we're beginning to see progress in our goal toward community engagement on a real level and toward transparency, and I appreciate all the effort that each of you are putting into it. City Manager, did you have something for us before we do the agenda review?
Mayor, if you're okay, I did have a couple updates
Okay.
for council. So I was going to mention the Planning Commission video, so I appreciate Councilor Lockhart for bringing that up. Sorry, I'll get closer. I was going to mention the Planning Commission video. We're also working on a video synopsis of council meetings. Both of those projects kind of in their infancy and rough, but we've been talking about what that would look like and how we would publish those and who would be responsible, and purchasing some equipment, little things like lapel mics to make the voiceover more effective for that. So we'll probably be starting with that here within a few weeks, and you'll see that on our social media feeds. I'll make sure that you get a copy of those files. I wanted to also mention the budget survey will go out this week. It looks like probably Thursday or Friday. We're just kind of finishing that up. We were successful in getting some guidance from the City Manager's new Budget Advisory Commission that's been meeting now. They've had 2 meetings so far in 2025. That, of course, is a new board. So they gave us some good guidance on how to make that budget survey maybe more easy and simple for respondents to complete. You'll see that out in the world later this week. LCBA, of course, meets tomorrow, but more importantly, probably for LCBA and the city in the realm of economic development tomorrow is the Wyoming Business Council. We'll be hearing our grant and loan application for Wyotech. And just as a reminder for you, that project will bring a number of new jobs to Laramie. We're really hoping we will get approval from the board. I think I'm looking up the numbers so I don't misspeak. It is, this project, if awarded by the Business Council tomorrow, would allow Wyotech to add 400 to 800 students in welding, advanced diesel, heavy diesel, and trim in a new facility that they would build that is 137,000 square feet. Total project cost $42 million. We've applied for a $5 million grant and a $5 million loan so that the city and LCBA will be part of the funding scheme that would make this a reality. And more importantly, new jobs that this could create for Laramie are 99 new employees, most of those in town, although a few potentially being remote workers. And most importantly about those jobs, the wages for those jobs is 58% higher than the county's median wage right now and 12% higher than the industry average across the nation for jobs of this kind. So this is the kind of economic development we're always looking for that would raise our median wage in this county. It's a pervasive issue for 30 years. If we can move the needle on that, that'll be a game changer. And last but not least, lunch with locals, the WHAM luncheon at the legislature is Thursday. If any of you can go, I'll be there along with a couple members of the leadership team.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, could we check to see if anyone else is RSVP'd for the lunch with locals?
Is anyone planning to attend?
Okay.
Aye. 3.
Then we'll have a strong contingent from Laramie this week. That'll be great. We were not at all present last week, other than maybe Councilor Richardson. And the week prior, I had the chiefs with me, and Councilor Richardson was there. So we'll have a good showing this week.
So then we'll have a good showing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. The mayor, or can I ask?
Yes,
City Manager?
yes.
City Manager, all of those stats, I like shut down my stuff. Would you, on Wyotech, would you mind emailing us
Yeah,
that
what I'll do,
information?
Council, through you, Mayor, if that's okay, I'll send you the link to the Wyoming Business Council's board materials. I do want to caution you and the public, however, we received the draft of that on Friday, and we immediately recognized that some of the information in that packet, as it pertains to the city's finances, was not quite right. And so we've been working with the Business Council staff to correct that. So take those, it appears to me from looking at that presentation tonight, those corrections have not been made, but we are assured they will be made in front of the board tomorrow. So if you have any questions on the city financial data in the board packet, let me know or let Jen. And Todd Fieser will be representing us tomorrow there. I will be in town because we have budget meetings going on and LCBA meeting, and I will be monitoring that remotely. And then Brad Enzi with LCBA, our co-applicant, will be representing the city in Cheyenne tomorrow also.
Great.
Councilor Newman, you had a question or a comment?
It sounded like Wyotech had a good showing when they came and visited, and the amount of contractors I've seen walking through the building and builders, it's an exciting time over there, so.
Thank you. So last, if we can review the agenda for the regular meeting on March 4th. If you'll start with the consent agenda. Are there any comments or concerns?
Question, I guess.
Councilor Newman.
City Clerk 9F, is that, what are we, just a report to the stockholders of that company, or?
So in municipal code 509, it does state that if they have a change to their license application, that they have to notify us within 30 days. And so you, as the approving body of the licenses, I send you notification of those kinds of changes. So if they change a dispensing room, if they change their stockholders, things like that. So this, the entity is staying the same, but stockholders have been changed from Gary Hopkins and Mike Hopkins to Trinity and Trevor Thatcher.
So it's the Cowboy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I could clarify that in the title too and put the DBA in there so that it's clear. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions on the consent agenda or comments, concerns? If we can move then to the regular portion of the agenda. Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, we had discussed a few weeks ago, possibly on this meeting coming up, about the youth center and the lease on that land. And I don't see it on here. And I know you had some discussions you were still doing.
Yeah, I met with them, and they're regrouping and figuring out a date they'd prefer to have
Okay.
this in front of you.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's not here.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? In closing, I just want to make a brief comment. Over the last couple regular meetings that we've had, I've had a couple counselors come to me with some questions about an agenda item before we meet. And I was able to bring that to discussion with the Assistant City Manager, who directed that question to the appropriate division. And they were able to do the research prior to our meeting so that when the question was asked, they didn't have to try to answer it on the fly, but they actually had informative information. So if you all do have, I know that many of you do reach out, and that's perfectly permissible, but if you want to direct questions about a specific agenda item, I would pass that on to the Assistant City Manager, who would alert them that there are some need for clarification, and the research can be done prior to our coming to council. Councilor Newman.
City Clerk, and that's okay, right, according to the open meetings policy?
Yeah, you can definitely ask as a council for additional information. City manager just kind of tracks that request to make sure that we're fulfilling what you're asking for.
Yeah, I would add, the reason at the bottom of your cover sheets, it says who the staff contact person is, so you can reach out to them. If you copy Todd or I, we will make sure that that follow-through occurs.
And it made our meeting go very smoothly because they had their research done, and it kept our questions to a minimum, so. Much for your work and your participation and your, as usual, excellent questions.